When I saw the look in his eyes, full of rage and betrayal, I knew it was over. I was sitting in the hallway, wearing the very clothes he hated. My mind was spinning, my heart pounding in my chest as I replayed the events of the last few hours. How had it all come to this? It started innocently enough. It was just supposed to be a little flirtation. I told myself it was harmless, just a bit of excitement I'd been missing. But now, in the cold light of reality, I was staring at the consequences of my choices. I wasn't even sure how it had gone this far. One moment I was ordering a pizza, and the next I was lying in bed with the delivery guy, doing things I had only fantasized about. It wasn't planned, but it felt right. At least at the time. But the one thing I hadn't expected was for my husband to walk through that door right when we were caught. He had come home early, and instead of the usual, "Hey, babe, I'm home," the silence was suffocating. I knew he'd seen us. I could feel his eyes burning into me, and I couldn't look away from the look of pure devastation on his face. I could hear him breathing heavily, his voice trembling as he said, "What the hell is going on here?" I tried to speak, to explain, but nothing came out. How could I explain the unexplainable? How could I justify what I had just done? What could I possibly say that would make this situation anything less than a complete disaster? I opened my mouth, but the words felt foreign on my tongue, like I didn't even recognize my own voice anymore. I can explain," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. His eyes narrowed as he stepped into the room, his gaze flicking from me to the man still sitting awkwardly on the bed beside me. The tension in the air was suffocating, and the only sound I could hear was my heart thudding in my chest. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, to escape this nightmare, but my legs refused to move. "Explain," he repeated, his voice sharp and cold. "What exactly are you going to explain? That this is what you've been doing behind my back?" The delivery guy, whose name I couldn't even remember, shifted nervously beside me, clearly unsure of what to do. I could feel his discomfort radiating off of him, but I couldn't focus on him. I couldn't focus on anything but my husband, standing there, looking at me like I had betrayed him in the worst way possible. "You've been cheating on me with him?" John's voice cracked, and I saw the flash of hurt in his eyes before he quickly masked it with anger. How long? How long has this been going on?" I couldn't answer. My mind was blank, spinning in a million different directions. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. How could I have done this? How could I have let it go so far? "I don't even know who you are anymore," John continued, his voice low but trembling. "I thought I knew you. I thought we had something real, something solid. But now, all I can see is a liar and a cheat." I felt the hot sting of tears behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I couldn't cry. Not now. Not in front of him. "You're not the woman I married," he said bitterly. "And you never will be again." His words hit me like a physical blow. I had been selfish, reckless, and I had let everything slip away. The marriage I had taken for granted, the love we had built together, it all seemed so distant now. Gone in an instant because of one stupid, impulsive decision. I looked at him, my heart breaking. "John, I never meant for this to happen," I said, my voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." I didn't know what I was doing. But he was already shaking his head, his jaw clenched. "You think that makes it better? That you didn't mean it?" His words were cold, cutting through the air between us. "You made a choice. You chose this." The silence between us grew unbearable. I wanted to say something more, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. He had already made up his mind. "I want you to leave," he said, his voice firm now, no trace of the man I had once known in it. "Pack your things. I don't want you here anymore." It felt like the floor was falling out from under me. This was it. The end. I had no more excuses. No more chances. I glanced at the delivery guy, who had gotten up from the bed, looking just as lost as I felt. He started to move towards the door, and I could feel my own body reacting to the urgency in the room. But John was already turning away, walking out of the room, his steps heavy and final. I sat there, stunned, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. I didn't know what to do, where to go. Everything felt like it was falling apart at once. The door slammed shut behind him, and I was left in the cold silence of the room, the weight of his rejection settling like a heavy stone in my chest. I didn't know how long I sat there, staring at the spot where he had just been, trying to make sense of what had happened. I kept thinking about the look on his face, the anger, the hurt, the disbelief. I had seen him mad before, but this was different. This was something deeper, something that went beyond simple frustration. I had broken him, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to put the pieces back together. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw myself at his feet and beg for forgiveness. But I didn't know if I could forgive myself, let alone expect him to. How could I ask for forgiveness when I had betrayed the person I loved most in the world? The reality of what I had done was sinking in, and it felt like the floor was opening up beneath me. My mind kept flashing back to the moment when John had caught us, how I had frozen, unable to say anything, unable to stop the damage from being done. And then, his words still echoed in my mind. "You're not the woman I married." That was it, wasn't it? I wasn't that woman anymore. The woman who had been content with a life that felt safe, predictable. The woman who had loved her husband with everything she had. Somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. And now, I didn't know how to find my way back. I glanced over at the delivery guy, who was still standing by the door. He seemed just as stunned as I felt. Neither of us had expected things to escalate like this. Neither of us had expected John to come home early. But here we were, standing in the ruins of something that had once felt like it was built to last. "Are you okay?" he asked hesitantly, his voice breaking the silence. I looked up at him, my chest tightening as I tried to form a response. What could I say? I wasn't okay. How could I be? "I don't know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. I felt so small, so lost in that moment. My whole world felt like it was unraveling, and I didn't know how to stop it. "Maybe I should go," he said, taking a step back toward the door. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't think." "No," I cut him off, shaking my head. "I'm not asking you to stay." I wasn't sure why I said that, why I didn't want him to leave. Maybe I just needed someone, anyone, to not look at me like I was a monster. But the reality was, this was my mess to clean up. This was my fault. I had made the choices that led to this, and now I had to face the consequences. The delivery guy, whose name I still hadn't asked, gave me one last look, almost like he was waiting for permission to leave. I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice to say anything more. Without another word, he left, disappearing into the night. I felt a sense of emptiness wash over me. The silence was suffocating. I knew I had to leave, to go somewhere, but where? What would I even do next? I stumbled to my feet, my legs unsteady as I walked to the bedroom. My mind was in turmoil, but my body moved on autopilot, like I was watching someone else live my life. I opened the closet and stared at the clothes hanging there, not knowing where to start. The thought of packing was overwhelming, but I couldn't stay here, not now. And then I heard it. The sound of footsteps approaching, and the door creaked open. My heart skipped a beat as I turned around, half expecting to see John standing there, ready to shout at me, to accuse me further. But it wasn't John. It was Sarah. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with concern. "What happened? Are you okay?" she asked, stepping into the room and gently closing the door behind her. I didn't answer right away. How could I? How could I explain everything that had just happened? "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice cracking as I collapsed onto the bed. "I messed up, Sarah. I messed everything up." Sarah didn't say anything for a moment. She just sat down beside me and wrapped her arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. I leaned into her, letting the warmth of her embrace comfort me as the tears finally came. I couldn't hold them back anymore. Everything I had been holding in for so long came pouring out in a flood of emotions: guilt, shame, fear, regret. "I don't even know what happened," I said between sobs. "I didn't mean for any of this. I didn't want to hurt him, but I did." Sarah held me tighter. "I know," she said softly. "I know you didn't. But you've got to take responsibility for your actions, okay? You can't undo what's been done, but you can decide what you do next." Her words hit me hard. I had been running from my own choices, trying to justify them, trying to make sense of everything. But in the end, it was my fault. I had cheated. I had lied. I had betrayed the person I loved most. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice trembling. I don't know what's going to happen now. I don't even know if he'll forgive me. Sarah didn't answer right away. She just stroked my hair, letting the silence settle between us. She didn't need to say anything. She understood. The silence that filled the house was deafening. I couldn't escape the weight of what I had done, the betrayal I had unleashed on John. He didn't call, didn't text. He had shut me out completely, and I couldn't blame him. I had torn everything apart. The guilt ate at me, and as days passed, I realized that if I didn't face him, I would never be able to move on. I had to see John one last time. I entered the house, each step feeling heavier than the last. It was quiet, too quiet. The life that had once filled this place seemed gone. When I found him in the living room, he was sitting on the couch, his face buried in his hands. His pain was palpable, and it broke me in ways I didn't know were possible. "John," I whispered, but he didn't look up. The words I had rehearsed over and over didn't come out. I didn't know what to say anymore. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and cold. "Why are you here?" I just want you to understand," I said, tears welling up. "I never meant for this. I was stupid, selfish, and I hurt you. I'm so sorry." He didn't move. His eyes met mine, cold and angry. "Sorry? That's all you have to say?" I felt his words like a slap. "I never wanted to hurt you, John. I didn't think it through." "You've hurt me," he interrupted. "You've torn us apart, Rachel. There's nothing left." The sting of his words was unbearable. I could feel the space between us growing, something unbridgeable. "I never meant to change everything," I whispered. "But I did." He stood up, his anger flaring. "And I'm done. This is over. You destroyed everything, and I can't come back from that. We're done." I wanted to beg. I wanted to fall to my knees and tell him I would fix it, that I would do anything. But the finality in his voice told me there was no going back. As John walked out, leaving me standing there in the wreckage of our love, I realized I had lost him forever. The weight of his words crashed down on me, and I felt lost. I needed someone. I needed anything to make sense of what had happened. I walked out of the house into the cool night, aimlessly wandering the streets, consumed by the crushing emptiness of it all. And then I saw him. The delivery guy. The man I had cheated with. He was standing near his car, looking at me with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't okay. I was broken, lost in a sea of my own making. But his voice, his calm presence, felt like a lifeline. I don't know," I said, my voice shaky. "I don't know what to do anymore." He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You don't have to figure it out now. You don't have to do it alone." In that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I had made mistakes, horrible ones, but maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to keep living in the ruins of my past. Maybe I could find some kind of peace, even if it meant starting over in the most unexpected way. And as I looked at him, something in me told me that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new, uncertain path.